The rain hammered against the glass windows of La Belle Cuisine, one of those upscale restaurants in downtown Manhattan where a single appetizer could cost more than most people's weekly grocery bill. Inside, the dinner rush was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in pristine white linen, and the sound of clinking wine glasses mixed with polite laughter from well-dressed patrons who had waited weeks for a reservation. Sarah Mitchell moved between the tables with practiced efficiency, her black apron crisp and her smile professionally measured. She had been working at La Belle Cuisine for 3 years, and she knew exactly how this world worked. The wealthier the customer, the better the tip. The better the tip, the closer she got to paying off her student loans and finally opening her own small cafe someday. Every interaction was transactional. Every smile was calculated. She had learned to judge people by their appearance within seconds, and she was rarely wrong about who would make her night worthwhile and who would waste her time. The evening had been going smoothly until she noticed him through the window. A man stood outside under the restaurant's elegant awning, trying to escape the downpour. His clothes were tattered and dirty, layers upon layers that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His gray beard was unkempt, and he carried 2 bulging plastic bags that probably contained everything he owned. He was pressing his face close to the window, peering inside at the warmth and the food and the people who lived in a completely different world than his own. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Not tonight. Not here. This was a 5-star establishment, and having a homeless man lingering outside was bad for business. She could already see some of her regular customers glancing toward the window with uncomfortable expressions, their conversations faltering as they noticed him. The restaurant's reputation was everything, and her tips depended on maintaining the right atmosphere. She grabbed a glass of ice water from the service station and pushed through the front door, letting it swing shut behind her with more force than necessary. The cold rain immediately began soaking through her uniform, but she barely noticed. She was focused on the man who had now turned to look at her with tired, hopeful eyes. Before you continue with this story, if you're enjoying this narrative and want to see how this incredible tale unfolds, make sure to hit that like button right now, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell because we share stories like this that will restore your faith in humanity and show you that life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Share this with someone who needs to hear an inspiring message today. Now let's get back to what happened next, because what Sarah was about to do would change everything. The homeless man took a small step toward her, and she could see now that he was older than she had first thought. Maybe in his 60s, with eyes that held a strange mixture of sadness and something else she couldn't quite identify. Dignity, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion from surviving another day on the streets. "Excuse me, miss," he said quietly, his voice hoarse but surprisingly gentle. "I don't mean to bother anyone. I was just trying to get out of the rain for a moment. I'll move along if I'm causing trouble." Sarah didn't want to hear his story. She had heard too many of them before. Every homeless person had a sob story, an excuse, a reason why they had ended up on the streets. She had trained herself not to care because caring meant getting emotionally involved, and emotional involvement meant losing focus on her own goals and dreams. "You can't stand here," she said coldly, her voice cutting through the sound of the rain. "You're making our customers uncomfortable. This is a private establishment, and you need to leave immediately." The man nodded slowly, accepting her words without argument. "I understand. I'm sorry. I'll go." But as he turned to leave, Sarah felt a surge of frustration that she couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the stress of the long shift. Maybe it was the pressure of her own financial struggles despite working 60-hour weeks. Maybe it was just the easy target he represented for all the anger she had been holding inside. Whatever the reason, she did something she would replay in her mind 1,000 times afterward. She threw the glass of ice water directly at him. The water hit him square in the chest, soaking through his already damp layers of clothing. Ice cubes bounced off his coat and clattered onto the pavement. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The man stood there, water dripping from his beard, his expression shifting from shock to something that looked like deep, profound sadness. Not anger, not indignation, just sadness. As if this was simply one more cruelty in a long line of cruelties that life had dealt him. There, Sarah snapped, her voice sharp and defensive because some part of her already knew she had crossed a line. Now you're even wetter. Maybe that'll help you remember not to loiter outside businesses where you don't belong. The man said nothing. He simply picked up his plastic bags, pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders, and walked away into the rain, disappearing down the street into the darkness. Sarah stood there for a moment, her heart pounding, her hands trembling slightly. She told herself it was from the cold. She told herself she had done what needed to be done. She told herself that maintaining the restaurant's image was part of her job. But as she turned to go back inside, she caught her reflection in the window. For just a second, she didn't recognize the person staring back at her. Then she pushed the feeling away, straightened her apron, and went back to work. Inside, most of the customers had returned to their meals and conversations, the uncomfortable moment outside already fading from their minds. Sarah moved through her section mechanically, taking orders, delivering food, refilling wine glasses. But something felt different. There was a tightness in her chest that wouldn't go away. Every time she passed the window, she found herself glancing out into the rain, but the man was gone. About 10 minutes later, the front door opened, and Sarah barely looked up from the table she was serving. The hostess would handle whoever had just arrived. She was in the middle of describing the evening's special to a couple celebrating their anniversary when she heard her manager's voice, unusually loud and slightly panicked. Sarah Mitchell, come here, please. Right now." The tone made her stomach drop. She excused herself from the table and hurried toward the front of the restaurant where her manager, Thomas, stood next to the hostess stand. His face was flushed, and he kept running his hand through his hair, a nervous habit he had when he was stressed. But what caught Sarah's attention was the man standing next to him. It was the homeless man from outside. The same tattered clothes, the same plastic bags, the same unkempt beard still dripping with rainwater. But now he was inside the restaurant, and Thomas was treating him like royalty, practically bowing as he gestured toward the dining room. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "Thomas, I can explain. He was outside causing problems, and I was just trying to—" "Do you know who this is?" Thomas interrupted, his voice tight and controlled in that way that meant he was absolutely furious but trying not to show it in front of a guest. Sarah looked at the homeless man again, really looked at him this time, and saw that same gentle sadness in his eyes. "No, I don't know who he is. He's just some homeless guy who was bothering our customers." The man spoke then, his voice still quiet but carrying a weight that made everyone nearby stop and listen. "My name is Daniel Richardson. I own this building. Actually, I own this entire block. And as of about 5 minutes ago, I've been seriously considering what to do with this particular property." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She felt the room tilt slightly, and she had to grab the edge of the hostess stand to steady herself. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake, or joke, or nightmare that she would wake up from any second. Thomas jumped in, his voice now shaking slightly. "Mr. Richardson is a real estate developer. He owns Richardson Properties. He's been considering selling this building, which would mean our lease would be up for renegotiation with whoever buys it. And quite frankly, most new owners would probably just tear this place down to build luxury condos." Daniel Richardson reached into one of his plastic bags, and Sarah watched in growing horror as he pulled out not trash or recycled cans, but a leather portfolio that, despite being slightly damp, was clearly expensive. He opened it to reveal documents, identification, and what looked like business cards from some of the most prominent law firms and investment companies in the city. I make it a habit, Daniel said slowly, still looking directly at Sarah, to walk through the neighborhoods where my properties are located. I dress like this because I want to see how people really behave when they think someone has no power, no money, no influence. I want to see who shows kindness when there's nothing to gain from it, and who shows cruelty when they think there will be no consequences. Sarah's legs felt weak. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Around them, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Every server, every customer, every busboy was watching this scene unfold with rapt attention. I've been walking past this restaurant for 3 weeks now, Daniel continued, his voice never rising but somehow filling the entire space. In that time, I've seen your staff at their best and at their worst. Some of your coworkers, Sarah, have been kind. They've offered me leftovers at the end of the night. They've said hello and treated me like a human being. But you've always looked at me with disgust. And tonight, you decided that throwing ice water on me was an appropriate response to another human being trying to escape the rain. I'm so sorry, Sarah finally managed to whisper, tears starting to stream down her face. I didn't know. I thought you were just. Just what? Daniel interrupted, and now there was an edge to his voice. Just someone who didn't matter? Just someone whose dignity was worth less than your perception of this restaurant's image? Just someone who deserved to be treated with cruelty because of how they looked? Thomas stepped forward, his face pale. Mr. Richardson, please. I'm sure Sarah didn't mean any real harm. She was just trying to protect the business. I can assure you this doesn't represent our values as an establishment. Daniel turned to look at Thomas, and his expression softened slightly. Actually, Thomas, this has nothing to do with you. I've watched you run this restaurant, and you've always been fair and kind, even when you thought no one important was watching. Your staff, with a few exceptions, have been good people working hard jobs. This isn't about punishing the restaurant. He turned back to Sarah, and she felt like she might collapse under the weight of his gaze. Do you know what my life was like before I built my company? He asked. 30 years ago, I actually was homeless. Not pretending, not observing, actually living on the streets after my construction business failed and my marriage fell apart. I know what it's like to be invisible, to have people look through you like you don't exist. Or worse, to have them look at you with hatred for the crime of being poor and desperate. Sarah was openly sobbing now, her professional composure completely shattered. Other servers had gathered nearby, and she could feel their eyes on her, some sympathetic, some judgmental, all shocked by what was unfolding. A restaurant owner named Marie gave me a job washing dishes, Daniel continued, his voice taking on a distant quality as he remembered. She didn't care that I smelled bad or that my clothes were falling apart. She saw something in me that I had stopped seeing in myself. She gave me a chance, and that chance changed everything. I worked my way up, saved every penny, learned the construction trade from the ground up, and eventually started my own property development company. Everything I have today started because one person chose kindness over judgment. He paused, and the silence in the restaurant was absolute. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to listen through the service window. I come back to neighborhoods like this because I never want to forget where I came from, Daniel said. And I test people because I want to know what kind of character they have when they think there's nothing to be gained from being decent. You failed that test, Sarah. Spectacularly. Sarah couldn't breathe. She was going to be fired. She was going to lose everything she had worked for. Her dreams of opening her own cafe would die right here, right now, in front of everyone. Please, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. Daniel reached into his portfolio and pulled out a thick envelope. I made a decision tonight. I'm buying this restaurant. Not the building, I already own that. I'm buying the business itself from the current owners. I've been negotiating with them for weeks, and tonight I finalized the deal. Thomas looked like he might faint. The current owners were a corporate group that ran several high-end restaurants in the city, and they had been rumored to be looking for buyers, but no one had known the sale was actually happening. As the new owner, Daniel continued, I'm going to make some changes. First, this restaurant is going to start a program where we provide free meals to homeless individuals every Sunday. We're going to treat them with the same respect and dignity as our paying customers. We're going to show them that they matter. A murmur of approval went through the gathered staff and customers. Sarah felt a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe this meant she would get a second chance. Maybe he would forgive her. But Daniel wasn't finished. He looked directly at Sarah again, and his expression was unreadable. Second, I'm implementing a new employee policy. Every staff member will be required to volunteer at a homeless shelter for at least 8 hours per month. They'll be paid for that time as if it were a regular shift. I want my employees to understand that the people they serve in this restaurant are no more valuable as human beings than the people they'll serve at those shelters. Sarah nodded frantically, wiping tears from her face. Yes, absolutely. I'll do that. I'll volunteer every week if you want. Please, just give me another chance. Daniel held up his hand, silencing her. Sarah, I want you to understand something. The way you treated me tonight is probably the way you've treated others. Maybe not as dramatically, but in small ways. A dismissive look, a condescending tone. A judgment made in 3 seconds based on someone's appearance. I don't think you're a monster. I think you're someone who forgot that every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. He opened the envelope and pulled out what looked like a check. Sarah's heart raced. Was this severance pay? A lawsuit settlement? What was happening? This check is for $50,000, Daniel said, and gasps echoed through the restaurant. I'm not giving it to you. Sarah's heart sank even further, which she hadn't thought was possible. I'm giving it to the shelter where I spent time when I was homeless 30 years ago, Daniel continued. They're still operating, still helping people, still believing that everyone deserves dignity and a second chance. This donation is being made in your name, Sarah Mitchell, because I want you to be connected to something bigger than yourself. Sarah stared at him, completely confused. Was she fired or not? What did this mean? Daniel's expression finally softened, and for the first time, she saw something like compassion in his eyes. You made a terrible choice tonight. You were cruel when you should have been kind. You judged when you should have had empathy. But I believe people can change. I have to believe that because I've seen it happen. I've lived it. He pulled out another piece of paper from the envelope. This is a contract. You're going to work directly for me now, not for this restaurant. Your job is to help me develop and run the homeless outreach program I'm starting across all my properties. You're going to spend your days with the people you've been trained to ignore and dismiss. You're going to learn their stories, understand their struggles, and help create systems that actually support them instead of just moving them along. Sarah's mouth fell open. She couldn't process what she was hearing. The job pays the same as what you're making now as a server, Daniel continued, but there's no tips, because you won't be serving people who can afford to pay you extra for being nice to them. You'll be serving people who have nothing but their dignity left. And if you do this job well, if you truly learn what I'm trying to teach you, then after 1 year, I'll help you open that cafe you've been dreaming about. Sarah's tears started flowing again, but this time they were different. How did you know about the cafe? Because I listen, Daniel said simply. I've heard you talking to other servers during your breaks. I know you're drowning in student debt from culinary school. I know you feel trapped in a job where you have to calculate every smile and judge every customer by their wallet size. I know because I've been there, Sarah. Not in the same way, but I've been trapped and desperate and willing to compromise my values just to survive another day. He handed her the contract. This is your chance to become the person you actually want to be instead of the person this industry has forced you to become. But it's going to be hard. You're going to have to confront your prejudices every single day. You're going to have to admit when you're wrong. You're going to have to learn humility in a way that will be uncomfortable and sometimes painful. The question is, are you willing to do that? Sarah took the contract with shaking hands. She read through it quickly, barely believing what she was seeing. It was all real. The job, the salary, the promise of support for her cafe. And at the bottom, a clause that stated if she quit or was terminated for cause within the first year, she would be required to repay the $50,000 donation that had been made in her name. He was holding her accountable. He was giving her a chance, but he was also making sure she couldn't just walk away when things got difficult. Why? Sarah finally asked, her voice breaking. Why would you do this for me after what I did to you? Daniel was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. Because Marie, the restaurant owner who gave me a chance, told me something I've never forgotten. She said that kindness isn't just for people who deserve it. If it was, none of us would qualify. Kindness is a choice we make even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I'm not doing this because you deserve it, Sarah. I'm doing it because I believe in second chances. And I'm doing it because someone once believed in me when I was at my lowest. He extended his hand toward her. So what do you say? Are you ready to start becoming a better version of yourself? Sarah looked at his hand, the same hand she had watched ice water drip from just minutes before. She thought about her life, her choices, the person she had become in pursuit of tips and financial stability. She thought about the man walking away in the rain with dignity intact, despite her cruelty. She thought about all the people she had judged and dismissed without ever seeing them as fully human. She took his hand. Yes. Yes, I'm ready. Thank you. Thank you so much. The restaurant erupted in applause. Customers were wiping tears from their eyes. Servers were hugging each other. Thomas looked like the weight of the world had been lifted from his shoulders. And Daniel Richardson, billionaire real estate developer, smiled for the first time that evening. Over the following months, Sarah's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. Her first day at the homeless shelter was brutal. She came face to face with her own prejudices, her learned behaviors, her automatic judgments. She met people who had been doctors, teachers, veterans, artists, parents, all of whom had ended up on the streets through combinations of bad luck, mental illness, addiction, abuse, or economic catastrophe. She heard stories that broke her heart and slowly rebuilt it into something more compassionate. She learned that the man she had thrown water on was testing her because he had lived through the same cruelty and had dedicated his second act in life to creating opportunities for others. She discovered that every person has a story, and if you take the time to listen, you find humanity in the places you least expect it. The homeless outreach program that Sarah helped develop became a model for other businesses in the city. Restaurants, hotels, and office buildings owned by Richardson Properties all began participating in initiatives that provided meals, job training, and transitional housing support. Sarah became the face of the program, sharing her own story of transformation as a way to inspire others to examine their own prejudices and choose kindness over judgment. True to his word, after 1 year of dedicated service, Daniel helped Sarah open her cafe. It wasn't fancy, but it had a unique feature. Every morning, the first hour of service was dedicated to providing free coffee and breakfast to anyone who needed it. No questions asked, no judgment rendered. Sarah personally served those early morning guests with the same care and attention she gave to her paying customers later in the day. The cafe became wildly successful, not despite its charitable mission, but because of it. People wanted to support a business that valued compassion. They wanted to be part of something bigger than a simple transaction. They wanted to believe that kindness still mattered in a world that often felt cruel and transactional. 5 years after the night that changed everything, Sarah was invited to speak at a conference for restaurant owners and hospitality professionals. Daniel Richardson sat in the front row as she told her story, holding nothing back about her failures and her journey toward becoming a better person. I threw water at a homeless man because I had trained myself to see people as either valuable or worthless, based on their appearance and their ability to tip me well, she told the audience. I had become so focused on my own survival and success that I had lost sight of basic human decency. What I didn't know was that the man I treated with cruelty was actually testing me to see who I really was when I thought there would be no consequences for my actions. She paused, looking out at the hundreds of faces watching her. He bought the restaurant that night. But more importantly, he bought into the possibility that I could change. He gave me something I didn't deserve, a second chance. And that second chance didn't just change my life, it changed who I am as a person. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. People lined up afterward to talk to Sarah, to share their own stories of judgment and redemption, to ask how they could implement similar programs in their own businesses. And at the end of the night, Daniel approached her with tears in his eyes. "Marie would be so proud of you," he said simply. "The woman who gave me a chance passed away last year, but before she did, I told her about you. She said that's how kindness works. It multiplies. It spreads from one person to another, creating ripples that touch lives you'll never even know about." Sarah hugged him tightly. "Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for being cruel enough to hold me accountable and kind enough to believe I could change." If this story touched your heart, don't just move on to the next video. Take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's struggling to see the humanity in others. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that we all deserve second chances. Share it with someone who has the power to show kindness today, right now, in this moment. Because that's the real lesson here. It's not about the dramatic revelation or the shocking twist. It's about the daily choice we all make to either see people as fully human or to dismiss them based on superficial judgments. What will you choose today? The story of Sarah and Daniel reminds us that every interaction we have with another human being is an opportunity to practice kindness or cruelty. We are constantly being tested by life, not by dramatic scenarios, but by small moments where we decide whether someone matters or not. The homeless person on the corner, the struggling single parent working 2 jobs, the elderly person moving slowly in the checkout line, the teenager with social anxiety who serves your coffee. Every single person we encounter is fighting battles we know nothing about, carrying burdens we can't see, hoping for kindness in a world that often offers judgment instead. Daniel Richardson built his empire on the foundation of a second chance, and he used his resources to create more second chances for others. But you don't need to be a billionaire to change someone's life. You just need to be willing to see people, really see them, and treat them with the dignity that every human being deserves. That costs nothing except the willingness to overcome our own prejudices and fears. Sarah's transformation wasn't instant or easy. It required her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself, to admit her failures, to work hard at becoming better. But that's the beauty of second chances. They're not about erasing the past or pretending mistakes never happened. They're about acknowledging what went wrong and choosing to do better going forward. So, as you go about your day, remember this story. Remember that the person you're tempted to dismiss might be testing you, teaching you, or giving you an opportunity to be better than you were yesterday. Choose kindness, choose empathy, choose to see the humanity in everyone you meet. Because you never know when your small act of compassion might be the thing that changes someone's entire trajectory. And you never know when the person you're judging might turn out to be exactly the person who holds the key to your future. Thank you for watching. Now go out there and be someone's Daniel Richardson. Be the person who believes in second chances and the transformative power of kindness. The world needs more people like that. It needs you.